In antiquity, the Jews recorded their history on parchments and hid them in desert caves to preserve their story for all time. Today, 2,000 years later, only a few miles away from those desert caves, this century's Jewish history is preserved in images of light and sound on film in the Steven Spielberg Jewish Film Archive at the Hebrew University. The tools are different, but the purpose is the same: to record life as we know it for our children and their children after them, so that they will know who we were, who they are, and where we all came from. The archive stores images of Jews from all over the world, such as these scenes of Yemenite Jews crossing the desert on their way to the newly established state of Israel. And these pictures of a Jewish Kurdish wedding. From footage of Moroccan Jews in prayer to secretly photographed footage of Jews in the former Soviet Union.
ליהודים בברית המועצות מותר להתכנס ליד קבר אחים ולפעמים בבית הכנסת בחגי ישראל.
זה היה חג שלנו. זה היה יום העצמאות.
And precious images of Jews in Ethiopia, who trace their Jewish identity back to biblical times. The vibrant culture of Jewish Eastern Europe before World War II has been preserved in many Yiddish films, examples of which can also be found in the Spielberg Archive's collection. One such film is Yidl mitn fidl, starring Molly Picon.
Im Wald wird mit dir ein amazeldicke Schoß in der Höfe führen. Oi, was bist du ja so traurig? Es kommt doch auf dir die Schie. Vertracht noch auf den Weg, ich hab schon einmal am
And there are these images of Jewish life in Cracow before the Holocaust. But then, what is so remarkable about this footage that time and money should be spent to preserve it? The answer is that these pictures are of children who died children. Preserved in the archive are scenes of individual heroism, such as this excerpt showing beleaguered Jews who survived the flames of Europe and were turned back by the British in their attempt to find safety in the Jewish homeland.
And so the people came out into sight. Many were sick and dazed from the long hours in the bottom of the ship. They knew the British would take them to the small island of Cyprus, where they would again be placed in a camp. And they knew of this camp from the thousands who had gone before and been placed there by the British. It was a camp in a dry and deserted part of the island, a wilderness. Yet they had come because they could not remain in Europe, and even Cyprus was on the way to Palestine. They made ready their banners and their true flag. The flag was hoisted before the world.
if there are images of despair and near annihilation, then too there are those of triumph and redemption, of David Ben Gurion reading the words that fulfilled the hope of 2 millennia as he declared the establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Israel to be called the State of Israel. Ben Gurion's historic declaration fulfilled the ideals of the rebuilding of the Jewish homeland, as seen in these unique images of the early pioneers. Scenes of sweat and toil as the deserts were made to bloom. In 1961, Adolf Eichmann, one of the most wanted Nazi war criminals, was brought to trial in Jerusalem for his crimes against the Jewish people. The Spielberg Archive houses the master video recording of this trial, an incomparable record of the horrors of the Holocaust.
I saw this transport leaving. I heard the cries. I saw the beatings. I saw the shootings. I saw them being murdered.
Mr. Hausner, whom? You mean those who refused to enter the train? You mean you saw people being shot and beaten when they refused to enter the train?
Only on the following morning, an SS man, Lausmann, I remember his name, Laufmann came in and said, I know that you are very hungry. For 3 days we had no food. I know you are very hungry. We knew that there was some trick here, and when he finished saying this, a pot was brought into the room. We thought there was food in it. He took us one after the other, put his head into the pot, and shot him in the nape of his neck. This Kurdish caught a woman with a baby in her arms of about 18 months. She held the baby in her arms and began asking for mercy, that she be shot first and leave the baby alive. From behind the fence there were Poles who raised their hands ready to catch the baby. She was about to hand the baby over to the Poles. He took the baby from her arms, shot her twice, and then took the baby in his hands and tore him as one would tear a rag.
In 1967, barely 2 decades after the Holocaust, the Jewish state found itself threatened by 3 Arab armies bent on its destruction. A short time after that attempt failed, Israel's chief of staff and future statesman of peace, Yitzhak Rabin, received an honorary doctorate from the Hebrew University.
Dr. Yitzhak Rabin,
נשיא האוניברסיטה העברית,
Israel's Army Chief of Staff, General Yitzhak Rabin, now Dr. Rabin, delivers the main address of the convocation, in which he says that he regards himself as a representative of the entire Israel Defense Forces, of its thousands of officers and tens of thousands of soldiers who brought the State of Israel its victory in the Six-Day War.
The amphitheater at the Hebrew University on Mount Scopus also saw a very special celebration after the Six-Day War, where a modern-day Yidl mitn fidl, Isaac Stern, performed. Leonard Bernstein was the conductor, as the Israel Philharmonic played Hatikva, the Hope. And as they played and as they sang, their voices were joined by a chorus that had waited 2,000 years to return to Jerusalem. The Spielberg Archive does more than just collect and preserve film. It stores the best record we have of the experience of the Jewish people in the 20th century. There are people who, to this day, refuse to have their picture taken. They fear the camera will capture their soul. In a sense, perhaps they are right, for that is what is so zealously guarded in the Steven Spielberg Jewish Film Archive, the very soul of a people.